morning, everyone. It's actually 10:01 already. My name is Emmanuèle van Houdenhoven. I am the Sales and Recruitment Manager at Untouchables Recruitment Agency, and I am delighted to welcome you this morning at our Untouchables Expert Talk number 3, together with our partner on Recruit and CTO, CEO Dirk Meeuws. Good morning, Dirk. Everything fine this morning?
Everything fine, despite the rain. They're all sunshine here.
Yeah, exactly. Sunshine at Untouchables and on Recruit.
Exactly.
Okay, so I will start with a few preliminary remarks on the Multilingual's journey to the Netherlands before Dirk sheds some light with figures and facts and trends into the subject at hand today. Has the flow of multilinguals in the Netherlands been altered in any way by the COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown weeks, actually month at this stage? So you are all familiar with, very familiar, I imagine by now, with our Zoom webinars. You have, as you know, a Q&A button where you can ask some questions to either Dirk or myself. Dirk will be doing his presentation and trying to take into account your questions as much as he can and as much as they are relevant to what he's talking about at that point. And otherwise, we have reserved a 15 minutes bracket at the end of his presentation, around 10:45, to answer your questions and wrap up the session. So most everyone has arrived in the meantime, I see, so let's begin. Since the beginning of March, we have been able to follow the progression of the COVID-19 crisis through numerous impact monitors by country, by regions, even in the Netherlands, sometimes also by sector. And ultimately for us, one of the most important impact to be measured was that of the impact on the international community in and outside of the Netherlands. Organizations like THIC, the Hague International Center, the local soft landing agency for internationals, have recently done surveys precisely to do that, to measure how internationals already in the Netherlands were managing the information and the restrictive measures and how they were generally impacted. As the Untouchables agency, what we are also looking into is are multilingual candidates outside of the Netherlands still interested in the Netherlands to seek job opportunities? And when this opportunity becomes an actual job, what would be playing a part in the decision making? So first of all, sorry, I see that I've been not going through the program at hand on the presentation. So here is our little program. So let's look at both the possible personal and professional impact of the COVID-19 restrictions on the multilingual population. And actually, what's important here for us is that these restrictions will impact both internationals and multilinguals already living in the Netherlands, with the questioning around whether in light of these restrictions they will actually stay in the Netherlands and not be scared off and go back to their country as soon as travel restrictions are lifted or their personal circumstances will allow it. And also the impact on their counterparts, the multilinguals living still in another country and contemplating moving to the Netherlands, and what short and medium term impact will play a role in the decision making to move to the Netherlands. So first, on the personal level. And actually, the interesting thing about this is that when I was preparing the introduction, I realized that the impact that we see or that we are able to measure sometimes is proportionally inverted on multilinguals in comparison with the impact seen for Dutch nationals in the Netherlands. For example, and our first point of impact is a very good example of that, travel restrictions. This has been having a huge impact on the international community in the Netherlands, as in any country for that matter, during the lockdown month. and with a lower, somehow lower impact on the Dutch nationals, because of course they need less to travel to see their family and friends. The second point of impact was the access to information. During the lockdown period, the sense of time and weeks passing by was really rhythmed by the TV appearances and updates from Prime Minister Rutte here in the Netherlands. But as most of you know or may have noticed already, I am French. So of course, my lockdown was also rhythmed by the TV appearances and updates from French President Emmanuel Macron. And of course, and I'm not the only one, so most of all of us internationals are doing this, comparing the national measures from our country of origin when the measures taken in our adoptive country, sometimes even with the global measures. And guess what? It happens that they are contradictory more often than not. And we are talking about whether or not to wear a mask, whether or not to test for COVID-19. And generally speaking, the differences on the political and medical approaches, not everybody in the Netherlands, not every international living in the Netherlands is familiar with the Dutch culture and the Dutch individual sense of responsibility and citizenship. You know, the stay at home and social distancing advices from RIVM or Prime Minister Rutte. In France, we tried the approach, it didn't work. So we moved to a hard lockdown, which wasn't the case here. So all of that is definitely potentially for the multinationals and the multilinguals in the Netherlands, a source of questioning at the very least, and sometimes also stress and anxiety. One of the other point of impact, quite literally, is the distance with family and friends. This is actually funny because for any international living in a different country, that distance is a given, and it may have been having a higher and heavier impact on the Dutch nationals. And the last one, on the contrary, the social isolation. Imagine newly arrived Dutch multilingual students alone for the first time in their life in a foreign country, far from their family and friends, with no new network being built and being locked down for a number of weeks. This potentially has been hard and potentially can also lead to repatriation at the first possibility of travel. So these were the personal impact points. Let's move to the professional impact ones. And as you know, the multilingual professional community in the Netherlands, as in any country, is anything but homogeneous. And neither are the point of impacts. On the one hand, there is a sense of a higher job security for multilinguals in the Netherlands, and I'm talking, among other things, about what we call expat contracts, or simply multilinguals working for a large international corporation in The Hague, in Amsterdam, or a non-profit organization or an embassy in The Hague. Or even, to some extent, the multilinguals working for Dutch organizations here with international clients and suppliers, and particularly the ones linked to proximity markets like Germany, Benelux, France, with a very clear rise in COVID-related demand that we have seen as a multilingual recruitment agency. On the other hand, you also have a higher risk of unemployment. And I'm thinking of starters, the recent international graduates, including the international search-year visa students who are experiencing at the moment increased difficulties in finding a job, but also a narrowing window of opportunity to be able to do so before they will have no other option left than going back to their country because they're reaching the term of a visa. Or even, as NUFIC director Vema was mentioning, the European students whose 56 hours a month side job is a prerequisite to get a loan and an insurance from the Dutch government here. So if they suddenly lost their job in these past few months, they are left with no source of income, so no money, no insurance to live in the Netherlands and pursue their studies. So these, of course, also in line with the online studies and exams, they may be going back to their own country, which is something that we don't necessarily want to see happening. Nevertheless, and still on the subject on the students, there seems to be some light, at least for now, at the end of the tunnel, because we've seen no decrease in international students' registrations, and we're talking about the school year starting in September 2020. But Nothing's director, again, is warning about a possible longer-term pandemic, longer-term repercussion of the pandemic on the volume of international students actually coming physically to study in the Netherlands and potentially work as well later on. And we're talking here, sorry, as I was mentioning earlier, about the generalization of online university studies and exams, which may lead the student to stay in their own country and only virtually becoming a student of a foreign university. And I don't know if you followed recently, President Trump has been one step ahead of this, with potentially already sending these students back to their home country and withdrawing their student visa privileges, which has led some of the top US universities to form an appeal to demand that these international students be physically present on the university campuses. So all these measures potentially are good for the Netherlands, because the Dutch universities are a very valid fallback option, as they are at the top of the European universities on international rankings available to all students worldwide. A couple of last professional impact points still. For multilingual job seekers outside of the Netherlands, there is a bigger sense of employment urgency at the moment, particularly in the countries where we've seen a higher unemployment rate, starting with the European countries, where the Netherlands are being seen as a very valid alternative to find work. And of course, and that's the last point here, one of the immediate potential impact derived from the travel restrictions and the pandemic environment is the fact that the international professional mobility may be reduced. Of course, it's difficult for young professionals or even for a whole family to start planning moving abroad in these circumstances. So these were a little bit an overview of the various impact points. I just would like to make a couple of positive remarks about why we think and we see that the multilinguals are still coming to the Netherlands and will still be coming to the Netherlands despite the pandemic environment. First of all, our own figures, the Untouchables website traffic. This is in fact more or less a quick follow-up on the figures that we presented on the webinar in May. As of the end of June, our website traffic is officially practically back to the traffic level of January 2020. We're between 43 and 44,000 site visits per month. We have seen a strong increase since the original drop in March, where we dropped at 36,000, and ultimately in April, which has been the lowest since the beginning of the year, at 33,000. Slight growth in May, 38,000, and then this big spring to over 43,000 in June, which is very encouraging. And as a side note remark here, I just simply would like to say that to this day, our website traffic remains in volume our #1 source for multilinguals at Untouchables. And then a couple of points on what I call the Dutch attraction. Why are we keep talking about the Dutch attraction today? Well, because the Netherlands are clearly still seen as the international and multilingual country by definition, by European and multilinguals in general, offering more job opportunities to multilinguals in Europe. We show 1 in 4 vacancies in the Netherlands requires more than 1 language. And additionally, most of these jobs also have and offer a higher salary for multilinguals. And traditionally, the Netherlands, as we all know, has a very solid economy, even now, particularly in comparison with the other European countries. And of course, paired with that is a low unemployment rate. Again, as I mentioned earlier, in comparison with the Southern European neighbors, where increases have been ranging from 8.6% to over 16% in countries like France, Spain, or Greece, and even potentially from farther countries. I mean, the US has reached an all-time high in terms of unemployment in April with 14.7%, had never been seen since 1948. Canada is the same with 13% in April. And these are, by the way, OECD figures from June 2020. So this is all good news for us, for the Netherlands. Additionally, the Netherlands has been recently ranked as fourth out of the 28 EU members in the Digital Economy and Society Index, the DESI, based upon digital indicators such as connectivity, human capital, and integration of technology, which is, if anything, has even been more highlighted during the lockdown period. And also, the Netherlands are top 5, I mean, within the top 5 innovation leaders, actually number 4, behind Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, on the 2020 European Innovation Scoreboard, even surpassing the US, I mean, the Europe is as a whole for the past 2 years. So the Dutch Foreign Investment Agency explains, and that's the NFIA, explained that one of the high score on the Dutch Innovation Scoreboard is precisely due to the amount of foreign doctorate students in the Netherlands, as well as the fact that the Dutch rank amongst the top 10 education systems in the world. And as a result, which is a little known fact, the Netherlands are the second highest number of patent applications in the world per million of inhabitants. All of these points may be secondary and even anecdotic in a sense, but they are very much part of the decision to choose the Netherlands as a smart and positive move to find a new job and a next job. And Dirk will now detail for you the actual profile of these active multilingual job seekers in the Netherlands. Which tools are they using? Which tools can you as an employer put in place to attract them? So enjoy, that's to you, Dirk.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Can you confirm that, Emmanuèle?
Yes, I do. It's great.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the trends indeed in the market, but also some more, let's say, tools or which you can use in each stage of the candidate journey, but also show some, let's say, job seeker behavior from multilingual candidates versus what general candidates in the Netherlands are doing. And I'm zooming into different disciplines and segments. So for example, sales and finance, but also junior and let's say more senior positions. So let's dive into that. A bit about myself. I'm Dirk Meeuws. I am multilingual in that sense. I was born in Mozambique, so raised bilingual, both Portuguese and Dutch. My mother is from Mozambique, my father is Dutch. Raised near Eindhoven in a little village called Gelderop, but before that I also lived in Maputo, which is, or like in Sudan, Kassala, and in Nicaragua, Bluefields. I live in Rotterdam, but studied in Delft, so have been in many places myself, a bit of a wanderer. 32, father of a 9-month-old daughter at the moment. It's nice to have her with me, close to her during the lockdown. I'm CEO and CTO at Ondergoed, which means that I'm responsible for day-to-day operations and the product and the platform we have. I have a background in aerospace engineering and thus data, experience in recruitment through Ondergoed, and my passion and what I'm doing at Ondergoed is combine those two worlds, right? So using data, which recruitment companies or teams collect, to make sure that they can make better hiring decisions and find the best candidates in a good fashion. And in that sense, we're also assisting Untouchables, and that's also I'm happy to share some of the insights with you today. I saw a question from Alicia that you could only see the first page. Is it now correctly? Are you showing my? Are you seeing my face at the moment? I guess so, right? Great.
The first page, which one? Sorry, no, that was, I think that was my mistake.
Okay, no worries. So how to engage in every step in the candidate journey. So if you ask us, so there are a couple of steps where a candidate can get into before someone is really an ambassador for your company or brand. So the candidate is either passively job seeking. That means that the candidate is not aware of that he or she wants to apply for it with you or be working at you. The candidate is orientating. So it has made the conscious decision like, hey, look, I am open for a new role and just exploring options. The candidate is actively job seeking, where the candidate really wants to make the move to a new job. Then the candidate decides, and the candidate is really in the recruitment process. So being on first interviews, sometimes assessments, where the candidate is then hired, right? So getting onboarded and making sure that the start of their new opportunity is as expected. And finally, and that's a really important one, and which sometimes people forget, is becoming the ambassador for your company, because positive referrals are one of the strongest channels to drive new candidates and hires, and really helping your employees or co-workers or let's say communicate your brand, how great it is to work at you, really helps in driving more candidates to get through your pipeline basically and get hired. And now with each and every step, I'll explore some tactics which you can use to engage with these audiences. So the first one is passive job seekers. So the objective of passive job seekers is to get candidates to be interested and move, right? So candidates might or might not know you, but at the moment are not open to a new job, or at least they don't know. And so the things that you can do to start getting in front of those candidates is to post channels, like posts on social media channels. So it could be, for example, a Facebook or a LinkedIn, where you announce your jobs. And by growing your network, you actually increase your reach, and therefore you make it more likable or probable that candidates that don't know you might get interested in what you have to offer, your roles, and therefore start to consider you as a next career move. So things you can use, for example, in LinkedIn or Facebook, and you have some more recruitment tech tools to assist you with that, and I'll get into those later. So you can use display advertising, so you can show banners. You can use email marketing on your database, because your database is probably also has quite a lot of candidates that have applied in the past and therefore not actively seeking anymore, but sending them constant reminders and updates with new opportunities you have might get them passively active again. And of course, you can also source candidates from resume databases, but also from LinkedIn. And once you have a proper job opportunity, candidates might be interested in really going further with you down the process. So when a job seeker turns from passive and gets interested, then the candidate knows like, hey, I'm now exploring options, I'm orientating. So the objective here is to let the candidate learn about your employer brand and what you have to offer. What kind of people are they going to work with if they work at you, or are, let's say, hired at your place? Or so, and the channels which you can use for that is predominantly your own websites. It has to be mobile friendly, because we see that there's a big trend in that most of the traffic is nowadays mobile. So your website should also be mobile friendly and easy to navigate by mobile phone. It should be easy to find your vacancies, right? So, for example, this is a screenshot from Coolblue, where they have like a prominent search bar where you can start with your search, And I know that the Dutch Wills also has this search bar on their own website where you can easily see which kind of disciplines are open, which are in which locations, and where you can start basically your job search. And of course, the look and feel should also match the let's say the value proposition you have as an employer or a company, so that the job seeker also understands like, hey, this is the kind of brand or company I want to be associated with. And another becoming more important place where people start compare basically roles and companies are company page and job platforms. So for example, LinkedIn and Glassdoor and Indeed, you can have company pages with reviews, and more positive reviews of course also strengthen the likability and the confidence they have with the particular employer, and therefore also make it more likable that they will pursue job opportunities with you. So once a candidate knows like, hey, or a job seeker knows, I have explored my options, I really want to make a decision, then they become really active job seekers in that sense. And so the objective in this stage of the funnel is to get candidates in touch with the right vacancies, right? So you know that a candidate is really searching for a role. Now it's just a matter of like showing the right job opportunity, having the right, let's say, sales pitch, job description, or marketing pitch, like, hey, this is what you get, this is who you're going to work with, and this is why you should choose for us, and this is why we need you, to really convince them to apply for the particular role. Some of the channels you can use for that is, for example, job search engines. If people go as job search engines, a portion of them is of course passive job seekers, but we know there are also quite some active job seekers that are looking specifically for sales roles or finance roles or controlling roles, for example. Being on job boards, which is kind of the same as job search engines, using things like the LinkedIn job slots, but also sending job alerts, because they can both activate passive job seekers, but also can, let's say, show the right opportunities to active job seekers. So when the candidate is hired, then they go into the recruitment process, and that's sometimes also, let's say, let's put it differently, the recruitment process is a really essential part of your whole candidate journey as well. And we see that sometimes some companies tend to forget that. So the objective here is to inform the candidate what can be expected in terms of next steps in the recruitment process. So I'm not sure if any of you has recently booked a flight through KLM. Probably now in the last couple of months it will be a little bit harder, but if I talk about last year or something, and the nice thing is that in their, let's say, checkout process, if you order your ticket online, you can actually get enable the option that you get updated through WhatsApp. And you get updated with things like, hey, this is your boarding pass, you can check in now. And basically it will give you updates through WhatsApp on what's happening with the with your recruitment process, or like with the whole flight, what's going on. If there's a delay, it will let you know. So you're constantly aware of what your next steps are, and that makes it a far more enjoyable experience because you know what you need to do and what is needed from you. And even a nice thing they added, I think last year, is that if you're then flying, you can easily create a WhatsApp group and invite people you want to be updated. And it will actually post in that group like, hey, the flight is taking off and the flight has landed. So the ones close to you also know that the flight was safe, that you landed in a safe manner. So that all contributes to having a really enjoyable candidate experience. And in this case, a customer experience. And if you do that with recruitment, it also means that you proactively reach out to candidates and saying, hey, these are the next steps, this is what is needed of you. Here, maybe you have some preparation to do for your first interview or second interview. And it really helps them become an ambassador, even if they are declined or rejected in the process, because they still had a nice experience. So some of the channels that you can use for that is, for example, your ATS. So in some case, you can send, let's say, automated messages from your ATS when candidates reach certain stages. Email, of course, and you can use email marketing platforms like a MailChimp or whatsoever. SMS, WhatsApp, so what I just explained with KLM, the phone, right? So just calling candidates and like, hey, how are you doing? Do you know what is expected of you? and a portal. So a portal is something we less often see, but it's more an ambition of some of the recruitment teams to really have a portal where can log in, see what the process is, what the next steps are, how, and really be in touch basically in what's happening, like a track or trace of your recruitment process. And then once a candidate is hired, and it's actually far more relevant now during the lockdown, that's onboarding, right? So giving the candidate a warm welcome, providing them the proper guidance and during onboarding to increase employee satisfaction and performance. So we're like some of the tools which are now being used a lot more are things like Apical or Talmundo, which are onboarding, let's say, platforms and portals where candidates can really, although it's not physically, they have like, hey, this is what you should do on week 1, this is what you should do the first week, this is what you should do the first 90 days. I really give them proper guidance in onboarding within the company. And actually, if you look at, if you sign up, for example, for a LinkedIn or a Facebook, or let's say now more business to consumer type platforms, you'll see that there's kind of a whole onboarding script going on that helps you get set up, right? And especially once the human touch is kind of physically lost now during lockdown, having a proper onboarding in place with maybe tools, but can also just be emails or let's say plannings or sessions you host to help the employee really have a kickstart of their new opportunity, really helps in let's say decreasing the first year churn, to say so, having people in a happy workspace, really, and it also impacts performance because people are up to speed much more quickly and know who they should reach out to or can reach out to. So again, some of the channels you can use for that are Apical and or email. And then finally, once a candidate is really an employee, it's really important for them that they become also the ambassador for your company by providing the proper candidate experience, but also making sure that they leave positive reviews or referrals on let's say company pages of LinkedIn, on company pages of Indeed, of a Glassdoor, etc. So they know like, hey, this is a great place to work. There are actually people saying that, right? So and it sounds genuine. And next, that you can also launch referral campaigns, where you can give employees a incentive when they propose nice new candidates, and you can do that through email marketing. So every step of the candidate journey, from passive to exploring to active, to really make decision, getting hired, being in a recruitment process, and finally being an ambassador for your company, all contribute to hiring success, a great candidate experience, and therefore increase also your, let's say, your next hires, because a great process also means that you know what you should do in each stage of the recruitment funnel, and therefore also know which strategies to deploy, and what to do to make sure that you hire the right amount of candidates. So in the Netherlands, you have, at least in Benelux, quite a big landscape of recruitment tech companies, which can assist you in each and every step of the funnel. So I've prepared for you all a link, and we'll share this presentation, of course, after this webinar as well, so you can look it up yourself. But if you want to take a look now, you can screenshot it or whatsoever. It's go.onrecruit.net/rectech for recruitment tech-landscape. And basically, the recruitment tech, which is a Dutch recruitment tech platform, has created this chart where you can see per, let's say, segments, which kind of toolings are available. And I know some are a bit overwhelming if you look, for example, at recruitment sites, but it can give you some points like, hey, in what kind of problems, which kind of companies can I reach out to, and which can help me in each step of the way. And if you're wondering where we are as OnRecruit, we are on the top right in data and dashboards, because we try to really show how the recruitment funnel looks and what you can do to influence each and every step in the process. And one of the nice things, and that's also what Emmanuèle was hinting, of course, is that we do this for Undutchables as well. And what I have here is actually, we have been working with Undutchables for now 3 years, roughly, is the evolution of the amount of sessions or visitors on the website over time. And you see that, especially late last year, second half of last year, there was a huge surge actually in amount of sessions It's like they made some optimizations in their marketing strategy, and it really paid off in how many people were hitting the website basically. Let's see, now my own thing faces in front of the chart. Let's see in the meantime if there are any questions. I don't think I've seen them. Let's see.
We can minimize the screens if you want.
Oh no, it's fine. So what you can see is basically that there is some seasonality, but especially late last year, second half year, so it was huge surge in amount of visitors, which then unfortunately dropped in during lockdown, which is what we see all over the line. But the positive thing is, and that's what Emmanuèle also hinted, is that if you look at June, it's actually on par with the beginning of the year. So, and that's something we see across many of our customers as well. So like especially towards June, we see an increase in volume again, and we see a lot of job seeker behavior. And that's purely talking about candidate side, not per se the amount of vacancies that are open or whether companies do or do not have actual open vacancies. But at least it's nice to see that candidates themselves and job seekers themselves are actively looking for new opportunities again. And then what's also, I think, nice to see, so this is the time on site, so how much seconds basically a candidate on average invests in the career site, and this is specifically for untouchables, where you can see that, for example, during like the beginning of the year, people are spending close to 2 minutes on average on the website, really exploring different opportunities. So the ability to attract multilingual candidates and really get them engaged and get them to look at different pages on the website is huge, which has a small a decrease again during the lockdown, but you see that also steadily increasing again. So not only there are more candidates coming to the website, also candidates are investing more time in the website. And that's also a commonality we see across the customers we have. If now I'm going to zoom in into different disciplines and different roles, basically to show you what the differences are. So this is not only untouchables data, this is also specifically, let's say, multilingual data, right? So to what extent are candidates or job seekers looking at multilingual roles? And kind of I'm not sure it's a disclaimer, but some context. We have across 40 customers within the Netherlands. Some of them have multilingual roles, some of them have sales roles, but if you look at the whole customer base, it's, I think, quite a good representation of the labor market. So by basically combining all that information, we can give a perspective on how is job seeker behavior for, let's say, multilingual candidates versus non-multilingual candidates, and then zoomed in for different types of roles. So for example, this is for sales roles, and I'll get to some others as well. So if you look at sales roles, January is always a good month. So January 1st, like the first week of January, new budgets open again, sales ambitions are set, and therefore sales roles are opened, which actually during lockdown, because it was still okay-ish the first quarter, but the second quarter really got a hit if you look at job seeker behavior. And that's actually one of the disciplines, and you'll see the others later on as well, where the bounce back basically is a little bit more limited, right? So the sales roles are now ramping up, but it's a little bit less than in other disciplines. And if you look at that for, let's say, the whole like non-multilingual vacancies, we kind of see the same trend, although like now there are more sales positions being opened, or let's say more sales job seeker activity from the general speaking, right? So the surge in or the increase in let's say job seeker behavior for non-multilingual vacancies for sales was a little bit bigger. But I guess in this case it also means that probably the multilingual sales roles start to get active as well. So they are probably behind that. Unfortunately, summer is awaiting, but I'm quite sure that August, September, then that will pick up again. But that's something that's indeed a difference. Like in multilingual, you see that the sales roles are a little bit slower in bouncing back than generally speaking. If we then look for at finance roles, there we actually saw that let's say February was a really good month in job seeker behavior. And then you see basically the same bathtub again, right? So during the lockdown, that's a little bit less. April and May are then the bottom, and then in June you see it surge back again, up again. And looking at the first couple of weeks of July, we see that this trend is continuing. I know the holidays has started in some regions in the Netherlands at the moment, so probably now there's a kind of a pulse, but it's at least a positive information that also that the finance positions are also bouncing back in job seeker behavior. And if you look again more at not specific to multilingual, but in general, you see that that's across the whole line, right? So there we see a little even also a big bounce back, which probably will mean that that will also happen on the multilingual side. So that's also really positive and nice to see that there is indeed a bounce back and people are starting to actively search for new job opportunities again. If we then look at customer service roles, and unfortunately I cannot compare that with the general non-multilingual ones because we don't have that many. So like the order of magnitude of information in regard to customer service non-multilingual is for us a little bit too small to really say something. But it's actually, if you look at, if you let April aside, it's actually kind of stable. So March was still quite okay. April had kind of a dip, but May was then back up to kind of almost pre-corona, lockdown months. And so probably in that sense, I cannot see look into the hats of the candidates and job seekers. Quite some customer service roles were needed for some travel agents, for example, because they needed to reschedule bookings. So I can imagine that quite some industries had bigger demand in customer service, and I think that bigger demand then kind of counteracts the lockdown, and that's probably why still the customer service role are kind of really like there are quite some candidates on customer service roles looking for roles. If you look for junior roles, and then that's actually quite interesting, and we look at multilingual again, we actually see that June is even higher than it has been this year. So we also know end of schools are probably now, so people are finishing their thesis, defending their thesis, finishing their bachelor's degrees, and you see that in the numbers, reflecting in the numbers. So even for multilingual, so probably people finish their job in the Netherlands or finish their education and really want to stay here because like what Emmanuèle also said, right? So there are multiple countries with different measures, and luckily in the Netherlands there's no second wave yet, so probably the conditions are really well to stay here. So I can imagine that quite some multilinguals are then looking for graduate positions, traineeships, junior roles to get started and stay in the Netherlands with a work permit and really put that hard 4 year or 5 years of learning into practice. So that's nice to see that the junior roles are really picking up, especially from multilingual sides, because that's probably a seasonality thing, and that's really one of the things that are booming. And actually, if you look at general speaking, right, then you also see that juniors are higher, but the difference is smaller than if you look at multilingual, where it's a lot higher than in January, right? So a lot of multilingual juniors, graduate position job seekers currently in the market. And yeah, so and so we also see that still some traineeships are being opened, right? Because that's the future of most of those companies. So there's, I think, really a nice match to be made between job seekers finishing their schools and companies looking for the future leaders in junior and graduate and traineeships. Then if you look at senior roles, so it started the year of high, had a big surge, like a drop in the lockdown, but then a more steady increase, right? So in some others we saw more like a bathtub, and here we see that during the lockdown it was quite on the low, but it's increasing month over month steadily, right? So and that's kind of also if I talk with some of our customers or in the market, and that's also one of the first roles that then are open again, because these are more strategic, where the junior roles are more harder to look for in some positions. And if you look at that from a more general view, right, so not only the multilingual side, then we actually see the same thing, although that May was a little bit bigger. But there you like that's I guess the different labor dynamics between the multilingual side and the Dutch side. For some roles, the multilingual will follow, and that's what we see here as well. There is a steady increase in the amount of job seeker activity from, let's say, more multilingual senior roles candidates. And so, let's see. I see one pop for Q&A. What is the best approach when looking for a senior creative role in an advertising agency? I'm a conceptual copywriter and content strategist. Thank you. So that's in that sense quite a big role. So like if you look at an advertising agency, you're looking. Let me start somewhere else. So there are two ways to attract a senior creative role. So you can say like someone has the skills and competences but doesn't necessarily have the experience. So you hire basically for basically hard skills, and you learn the experience along the way. So then you could look at let's say creative roles in maybe from customer side, right? So advertising agencies are working with customers. Maybe those end customers have some nice media, let's say people in a marketing team that you can train to become more a senior creative, have a senior creative role on advertising agency sides. Because I can imagine so quite some of those have marketing communication teams which have those roles, but not per se working for multiple clients, but just having one. And the other is just also in that sense, just sponsoring content. So putting, I'm not sure what the proper job board is for senior creative roles, but maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on Indeed, you can actually do a search yourself if you look for a senior creative director or something, or senior content marketeer, for example, and see what kind of roles are there, what's my competition there, and then basically based on that decide whether you want to invest in that job board to get in front of the proper candidates. But it also comes to, in that sense, getting your message out there, but on the other hand also having the nice job description, because if they're copywriter, I think they want to be blown away, and that's then really getting into the head of the senior creative person for an agency side, and think of what makes them tick, why do they want to choose for you in this case, and then persuade or convey them to really do so. Hopefully that will give you some pointers to get started. Yeah, that's actually now the question. So if you have more questions, we had roughly 15 to 10 minutes. This is the time. Emmanuèle and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah. Practically on time with the 10:45. So perfect.
Great.
Thank you, Dirk. You want me to pick up the Q&A there? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it looks like we've got we had some questions. There was one question about the process, but I wasn't sure exactly what was meant by that. How much total time it takes for the whole process. So I'm not sure whether it was referring to the passive to onboarding process maybe, but well, obviously it varies quite tremendously.
Correct. So sometimes they say it takes about 7, let's say, interactions or touch points before you make your decisions, right? So you've seen the potential employer or job opportunity 7 times. And normally that can be within a span of 1-2 weeks. That you really are, okay, this is something, I want to have a job and let's get in there. But if you really more passive job seeker, it can take up to 2, 3, 4 months to really think about what do I want, what are the different possibilities. So that's always a long end game, and it varies quite a lot between how quickly you can someone who is a passive job seeker to really apply. Depends on also on whether they're happy in a current job, whether they're not happy, because then they are more motivated to switch basically. And
on the, if I may, on the multilingual side, depending on the language combination of the candidate, it can sometimes go from the moment that the candidate is actually decided to become actively moving to a different job, it can go very, very quickly, simply because there is a high demand in some of the talent combinations. For example, German or French candidates speaking English and sometimes Dutch as well are very sought after. So of course the recruitment process from an employer perspective, from the moment that you set your vacancy out to the moment that you will be in a position to hire somebody can be fairly short. And at the moment there will be also competition, which is one of the reasons that we try to explain to our clients that it's crucial to give a quick feedback on within the process, the actual recruitment process and hiring process, to give a quick feedback, because otherwise these candidates may as well be going somewhere else and be hired somewhere else. I'm not sure it was exactly the question, the topic of the question, but I didn't get an answer from the person. So I don't think there are any more questions. I wanted to thank you, Dirk. I felt it was great. It gave a fantastic overview, and also a rare overview, because as in the troubles, most of the time when we present something, it's of course from the angle of the multilinguals, and having the data being compared between the Dutch candidates and the multilingual candidates gives a perfect overview. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks.
And if there are no more additional questions, let me check. How much time do you all hiring? Oh yeah, so it was indeed about the hiring process. So I think we answered that. And if you do you have anything else that you wanted to add in conclusion?
No, it was a joy to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
No, anytime, anytime. And as you know, I mean, those of you who have been following our webinars, this is our third one. We'll keep you informed about the next ones. There will be next ones for sure. And also with potentially with new partners, and but we'll keep you informed as soon as we can, and potentially with a new webinar as we start again in September after the vacation period. And in the meantime, I would say enjoy the summer.